So I wanted to speak on this video because I just really want to say a lot of times God wants to send us little, almost like little kisses, like little things of encouragement when kind of like you're struggling in your thinking at times, and God will just come out of the blue and send you a little thing of encouragement. And let me give you an example. So I've had a couple things happen lately, and one of them was when I've got this job just to get some money coming in. And I went to, so I basically got paid, and I was getting paid daily by doing this work. And so I went and got paid, worked and got paid. And then I went to, I think the dollar store. Yeah, it was the dollar store. And I went to to go buy a few things. I think it was like 5 or 6 things or whatever. Went to the counter, and I went to go get my items and pay for them. And the lady said, "I'm sorry, but your card, I've ran my card through." And she said, "You don't have any money. Your card is declined. There's no money in your card." And I was like, I just literally worked today, so there's money on my card, I'm sure. But I think I even checked too. So I was like, there has to be money on my card. We tried it again, didn't work. And so I was like, wow, and I was about to walk out, and I said, well, just, go ahead and take the items back. And standing next to me in line was a young black kid, he looked like almost like a thug, like a young rapper or something. So I was like, listen, he said, "Don't worry about it, I'll pay for it." And I've never had that happen before. I've paid for other people, or I've tried to help people monetarily wise, and given money out plenty of times to people, especially since I live in the city of Tampa. I don't live in the suburbs. So I live in downtown Tampa, probably one of the worst places. And, so for him to do that, he's like, no, I got it. It's never happened before, and I never really had that situation where I would do that. You know what I mean? And so I was like, wow, I almost didn't accept it because I almost didn't want to accept his kindness, And I wanted to share something else is that, I told many people that I'm also a January 6er. So I spent a couple months in prison. And, so a lot of times in prison, it's very racially divided in prison. And so there were times where there could have been riots that could have started in prison. And I had people, like a lot of the people I would get along with, but there was some people that really didn't like me. And I got along really good with Hispanics. They liked me for whatever reason. And I was learning Spanish in prison and all that stuff too as well. But there's a few individuals that were African American that did not like me, that would say things to me that would almost start trouble. And I was getting really frustrated at some point. And so someone that was close to me, we have bunk mates, we have different people that are right around. If you're in a low, you have people all around you. It's when you're sleeping, when you're getting up and doing stuff, so there's just always people around you. And one of the people that was physically very close to me where I was saying, he said, "Ray, these people hate us. They hate us." And he was referring to African Americans. He was referring that, like, in prison, he said, if you weren't a racist, you were going to become a racist. And, after you leave, because of what you experience in prison. Because I would think back, like, wow, what was prison like years ago? Or what was it, we've been taught a lot about racism, and the media's talked a lot about how white privilege and all these different things. So sometimes I would reflect on stuff, and I would say, I would try to say, like, understand what it was like if you were black to be going through things. And the prison I was in, it was probably about 45% black, maybe 40% Hispanic, and 15% other. So 15% other, and that would maybe include white people. You would say white people. So I would have and then a lot of these people that were white in the prison I was in, this is only my spot, were in there for kind of like sexual crimes. So it was, if you're going to throw down with somebody, these aren't the guys you're going to throw down with. You know what I mean? So basically, everybody knows that, and you got to stick up for yourself. That's really the kind of like the atmosphere a lot of times. And in the lows, there's not a lot of respect. They don't treat each other with respect. People don't. Now, I had close friends And so, and as well in the lows, or I guess, in prison, pretty much you stay with your own. Like if you're white, you're not going to hang out with a whole bunch of black people, or if you're black, you're not going to hang out with a whole bunch of white people. It just doesn't work, and they're not going to let you, and that's the way it is in prison in general. And the only exception to that is when is like stuff like church, because uh, I had the only floor. We had the only floor where we were actually have church service most days on our floor, and so I got a chance to preach every week, which was great. I preached about miracles and kind of like what God is doing coming up in the world. And so I got a chance to usually preach every week, which was great. And we had one time, it was the biggest crowd I think we had one day I was preaching. And, when we were under lockdown, when the TVs came back on, people didn't want to come to church, but I just went through that, But anyway, but I had some very close friends that were African American that I could talk to at any time. And some really good people, of course, like prison people, sometimes people make a bad decision, get in there. And, but many people become Christians and true followers of Jesus in prison. So I had a couple friends like that were African American, and most of the people in the church on my floor were dark skinned people. Let's put it that way, right? So, so I think God was really just doing something to say, hey, what you experience in prison is not, and for that guy, it was really touching to me. I was like, wow, And then I looked on I called up my debit card, and there was a charge on my card. So somehow there's this charge of whatever it was, $40 or something like that, and so I couldn't make that purchase. And then the next day the charge went away. So I was like, wow, that must have been God really just showing me that that what kind of like what the devil was trying to do is not true. That it's about your heart. It's not about races and this is races, this church against, or this race against that race and all that stuff. It's about the heart. And God did another thing, which was like I had all the I had some money at the beginning of the week, and at the end of the week I ran it down to my debit card down to zero. And then so I wasn't expecting anything. I looked at my card to see exactly how much was left, and it was the same amount that the week started with. So it's like God put money in my account, for it's like the little things God does to show you His love. And but I don't really know what to call this whole video, but I just really wanted to share that that's the devil likes to try to get you to believe in all these other things the world thinks of, but God really does love us, and it doesn't matter what race you are, it doesn't matter all that stuff. God always find a way, and it's about your heart. So just want to encourage you with that, and we'll talk to you soon.